we interrupt this program to bring you the Design Hustle podcast, conversations around successful design journeys. Take it away, Ali.
John Bowie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ali. It's a pleasure to be here.
I was waiting with my fingers crossed, hoping that you'd say yes to the session. I want to pick your brains so much, and I just discovered that, you almost have as much experience as I have. The numbers in my age. So I am almost 44, and you've got about 43 years of experience. So can you sort of start to maybe introduce yourself to non-design people in a way they understand what you do?
Very good, yeah. So I started out as a non-designer myself, right? When I first began, I started with a degree in English literature and found out that I couldn't get a decent job with that, so I went back to school and studied computer science. And didn't get a degree. I got into the master's program, took a one semester of master's, but my goal in life at that time was to live in Colorado. It's in the mountains, Rocky Mountains. And so I went on a tour the summer after my first semester of grad school to a lot of different tech companies. And I was able to secure an internship at Hewlett-Packard in Fort Collins, Colorado. And my internship was as a software developer. And my assignment was to try to write a program that would predict warranty failures for our desktop workstation computers that we were manufacturing at the time. Failed miserably at that. Okay, but when I was inside the company, I found this position called technical writer. And given my background in English literature and writing, as well as my experience in computer science, it seemed like something that I could do pretty well. So I applied for that job and got it as a full-time position at HP. And so I worked there for quite a few years as a technical writer. One of the manuals that I produced was called the PIG, the Peripheral Installation Guide. Okay? At that time, workstation computers were very configurable. You could put different circuit board cards into them. They could have, probably a dozen different user interface portals. Like today we have USB. Back then there was no standardization. We had all kinds. So I wrote this PIG, and I thought I had done a real service to my customers. I go on a customer visit, and I look up on the bookshelf this customer, and there is my manual, still shrink wrapped. Okay.
Wow.
And so that was kind of an epiphany for me. I realized you can't write your way out of a problem you design your way into. So I started to move into design at that point. And they didn't have any designers at HP, so I said, I'll do it, I'll do my best. So I designed a few things. And then eventually I went on to, after several years of experience doing that sort of thing, I joined a group called Design for the User, which was a corporate engineering role in Hewlett-Packard, and my job was to really try to survey the entire field at that time. Don Norman and so on, Alan Cooper, who else was out there, Jacob Nielsen, the thought leaders at the time in user experience, and see what their practices were. And then we realized that their methodologies would not fit into a global company that works at a very fast pace. It was it just didn't work. So we formulated our own approach to user experience design, and I taught it. I taught 2-day classes to all the different divisions within HP on how to use this process, and then I consulted with them internally on how to implement it. So that was really a wonderful experience. From there, I went on to several different companies. I worked for General Electric in their medical equipment division. I worked for United Health Group, which is a United States insurance company, but I was again in tech. We were designing portals and such for patients. Worked for an education technology company, and currently I'm working for Citizen, which is a consulting organization for the U.S. federal government, trying to help the U.S. government move into more of a user-centric higher maturity level in terms of user experience.
I can't even imagine what that what that must be like right now, because I've dealt with legacy software in one of the recent assignments that I was doing, and I think it's quite difficult from the position of the company and, let's say, the users as well. When a new system is available, for example, new technology is available, but they're still in love with something that was maybe designed and built 10 years ago, and that works perfectly, right? It solves the problem. They know exactly what it does, and the case of renewing it becomes really difficult. However, let me ask you one question. So, like, I see when you were telling the story, I was imagining this person who's constantly, like, very comfortable with, okay, things are changing, now I'm going to change. Things are changing, now I'm going to change. So what's that mindset like? So is it something that you've had from the start, or you were just winging it, right? So
yeah, it's a personal flaw of mine that I never want to do anything twice. Okay, so I'm always trying to find a better way to do something. When we started out writing manuals, is there a better way to do documentation? Okay, well, yeah, we can put it online. So I wrote this online help system for Microsoft DOS way back in the days, right? And I coded the whole thing because I did have some software background. But then when I was speaking about the peripheral installation guide, I actually created a prototype of a intelligent system, and what we called an expert system back then, right? It was AI, supposedly, with hypertext. That was a brand new thing. And instead of reading this manual and having to figure out, well, where do I fit in this manual? What's my system look like, and where can I find information about that? I created a system that you just ask a few questions. It tells you exactly what cables to use, what interface cards to use, what everything to use in order to get your system up and running. So that is my passion at the moment, and it has been for a long time, is trying to find better ways of designing things, better processes for designing things, better mindsets, better methodologies for designing things. And I continue to do that to this day. I wrote this book, the Politics of UX. I'm currently in the middle of doing a second edition of that that's talking about revolutionary redesign, using what I think is probably a very different type of approach to user experience design to really come up with a breakthrough product, a game-changing product, not just incremental improvements, but something that is totally new and different and serves the customer in a way that they've never been served before.
that is so exciting. I want to come to the book a little later, because I think there's so much to unpack there. I want to pick your brains on some of the topics around that, and I want to know why it's not everywhere at the same time. So is it because of the publishing, or I don't know what it is? But let's talk about the book in a little while. I'd still like to sort of understand this mindset of change and being comfortable with not knowing, and then the mindset of improving things. So was it easier for you not to be labeled as a designer, because then you would have felt stuck in a box, or because you were constantly changing, doing different sort of things?
Well, unfortunately, many of the roles that I've had, like when I worked for the design for the user group at HP, our group was chartered to really come up with new approaches to things, right? So that's how we came up with our approach that we train people on. I've also worked as a director of user experience design groups, and that's a lot of fun when you can break out of what's the traditional mold of what's expected of your team. When I had a technical writing team at HP, we did software design, to solve problems that we didn't think documentation was going to solve. Same thing when I was working at this education technology company. They were open to a whole new way of thinking about the products, even though that's scary. People think companies think, especially product managers think, oh my gosh, I've got this legacy product. It's making all the money for our company. And here you come along and you're going to tell us to do something completely different and basically sunset that product, replace that product, that thing that's generating all this revenue for us. But fortunately, we were able to do that. We found a way to do that that wasn't quite as scary. And so in every position I've had an opportunity to not just to use a design system, for instance, that had all these patterns established in it, which is fine. It really does make things more efficient. But find a way to constantly be looking for new patterns, new approaches, new interactions, new intelligence applications that can be employed in order to make these systems so much more compatible to companies that we're selling to. Because we're not there yet. I told this story. I was at the usability World Usability Conference in Austria a couple of times, and one of the things I talked about was, if you have little kids and they're in the back seat of your car and you're driving a long way, what's the thing that they're saying constantly? It's, are we there yet? Right? Yeah. In the UX profession, we are not there yet. We've come a long, long way over the course of my career, but a GUI, a Windows, like a Word design system, is just not the end point, right? Mm-hmm. It's not as good as it can get. There's something else out there. And so I'm always pushing people when I'm talking or when I have a director role in a company to try to get them to think outside the box and take away what they're relying upon as a standard and see if they can come up with something new. So I've always looked for those kinds of opportunities in my work life, and most of the time I've been able to find them.
That's amazing. That's a dream profession, right? So I'd love to be part of those think tanks, those sort of labs, skunk works, whatever you want to call it, right? So it's just idea that nobody tags you as either a UX designer. You're there to solve problems, right? And
right.
And you can use any which way, any kit. I call it a kit because I told you I'm an architect, trained architect. So that was the architectural toolkit. Then I learned other toolkits along the way to solve different problems or different things, right? But at the end of the day, it's this idea that software is almost like a means to an end, right? So, and sometimes we like to feel like, okay, we just want to get tasks done, which is not true. So I was telling a friend of mine, and I'm like, when we're sitting in front of the computer, let's say 10, 12 hours a day, even working 8 hours, but we're still sitting in front of these devices, we're technically part of a software environment, right? And this experience that we just can't leave. It's not as if like, okay, and I'm just talking about software as experience, right? Then of course there's other experience layers that we're part of, different ecosystems. So how do you look at all these systems together, and what do you see the role of software?
You're an architect. I've worked with many architects in development, and they always, come up with their architecture diagrams, right? Which have all the various components of the system that they're building, the data store, the website, the actual sources of information, how they all connect together, right? How they exchange information. What I did at HP and what I continue to try to do today is say, you're missing a component. The human being is a component in the system, and you need to treat them like that. Because if that human component fails, because you've assigned it functional responsibilities, which the human being is not capable of performing or doesn't want to perform, then the whole system will fail, just as certainly as if you had a bug in your software. So that's the way I approach this, is that, that what we usually call the user, and I hate that term, right? Mm-hmm. Because I always tell a story, I'm a writer, right? I'm writing my book. And then suddenly I write E equals MC squared, and I need to make a superscript, right? Where's the superscript button, right? From that moment, I stop being a writer and I start being a user. I'm now focused on Microsoft Word. I don't want to be a user. I want to be a writer. So I want this system to be as invisible to me as possible and to understand me and give me what I need when I need it. So that's the approach that I always try to preach to people, is include the user component in your software architecture diagram, and then also understand what the constraints on that component are, just as there are constraints on every component. Understand that the human component has very unique constraints, such as its patience, its ability to, it looks for relevance, right? Oftentimes we assign irrelevant responsibilities to the user, like I have this watch, and this watch tells me that I need to do a certain thing to set the time. That's irrelevant to me, just wanting the result of seeing what time it is. So we look for those things. And then we move from that analysis, which I think is really important and an underlooked part of user experience, this whole community, is the analysis of the current experience, using that as a baseline, using 3 tools of relevance. Is the stuff we're giving the user to do relevant? If it's not relevant, is there some other component in the system that could do this so the user doesn't have to? Then findability, once the remaining responsibilities are left, can the user find the information that they need? Can they find the superscript function?
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, effectiveness, which is kind of going into UX writing and content design, where you're thinking about, am I communicating to the user in a way that they can understand, or am I inserting a lot of technical jargon and things that are not easy for the user to understand or require translation? I have to look it up. What do you mean by this? So those 3 things, if we can use those to analyze the current design, we can come up with a better design then.
Oh, that's very structured in terms of thinking. I think it just so when you say findability, is it same as discoverability? Are they interchangeable?
No, I used to use accessibility, right? But no, that term now is dealing with people with certain conditions that we need to accommodate, right? Findability, I mean, is just being able to search for something and find it, or better yet, don't make them search, deliver it. Anticipate their need for it and deliver it to them when they need it.
Yeah, got it.
So, human beings spend most of their time searching for stuff, right? That's the biggest challenge in user experience design. You're constantly saying, okay, where's that function? What menu was that in? And then when they find it, then it's effectiveness. You go into Adobe Photoshop, for instance, and there are all of these controls and configurations that you can use. And they use a lot of technical terminology, which is fine when we were dealing with technical people like photographers, whose career that is. But for me, I'm not a photographer. I just want the result that I want, and I don't need all this other stuff. So hopefully AI is going to help with that, right? I'm going to be able to communicate my needs and have the AI figure out which of these switches and configuration settings I need in order to achieve that result.
Yeah, that's excellent, John. So let's talk about something. So what makes a person a book? Because you're an author for the book, The Politics of UX. So what made you write that book?
I really wasn't intending to write that book at first. I've been writing ideas down for 40 years. I've got over 400,000 words of things that I've written from decades ago that I'm trying to now go back and assimilate into a new book, which is, again, The Politics of UX, but it's focused on this revolutionary redesign DevOps kind of approach. But I've an English major. I've always loved writing. I always wanted to be a writer. So writing that book, I finally got the opportunity to sit down and do it when COVID hit and everything shut down. I had a couple of years there where I could go back and really sit down and write and get this book done. I didn't know I was going to write a book about politics of UX. It's just when I went back through all of my experiences and all of my previous writings, I seem to have a lot of information and a lot of ideas that I've collected over that period that had to do with how user experience professionals can affect the culture of a company, can work better with product managers, developers, all the different partners that they have in getting products out the door. And then just how human beings need to be treated a certain way in order for you to make them allies to your cause, rather than complaining about them and saying, oh, they ignore me, or, they just don't understand UX. How can we reach out to them in terms that they understand and help them be a part of the success that you want to push forward? And that was really what I was able to do in a couple of times in my career. It's not an easy thing to do, but I was able to get it done. And believe me, if you can do that, if you can get the entire organization behind a revolutionary redesign that you have come up with as a result of interviewing your customers, because they're going to give you the ideas, get them all excited about it. That is the best experience you will ever have in your life as a UX person.
That's great. I'm going to take a 1 second break here because my dog in the back, he just wants to go out. I just want to open the door. Sorry. All right. We can cut this section out. Yeah, we've got 2 Labradors, and one is outside, one was inside, and they just wanted to be together.
That's all right. You can never tell who's going to need attention and when they need it.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, that's great. So getting back to the book, so is there a reason why you called it politics? Because I feel it's a loaded word. It's a heavy word, yeah. So
it's got a lot of negative connotations, but it's real. Office politics are real, okay? And what this book is trying to tell you to do is really rise above being part of those office politics and finding ways to relate to people that kind of move you past that, right? How to deal with difficult situations that are likely to come up, how to deal with people who have a very different mindset and experience than you. One of the things that happened in a company that I worked for is we did these psychological profile things. You take in a questionnaire and they tell you that you're sensing or whatever. I can't remember what all the different categories they have are. But then they had us all line up against a wall, according to the scores that we got on these things. I was at the very far end of one end. The product manager was on the opposite end as far as possible. We were totally different, opposite people, but that's great. That's what you want. And we worked well together. We went on user experience, research, product management experience research trips together. We got along great. And it's all about respecting that kind of diversity of thought and mobilizing it, activating it within the organization to make that organization successful, to make yourself successful, and to make others working with you successful. So to me, that's politics. It's just people. It's how to understand people and work with them, understand what their drivers are, what their needs are, how they're being evaluated, what their concerns are, what keeps them up at night, and in using user experience to allay those fears and advance their success.
Yeah, got you. So, because I asked this question because one of the biggest, let's say, word that is being used right now is culture. Of course, culture is very important, and politics is something that somehow goes beyond it, right? So when you talk about culture, you still talk about some sort of like creating that culture, being part of it, and then creating that positive way to have maybe like for a person who joins in to have like a career ladder clearly shown, steps towards making that progression. What are the things that are required, for example? So there's transparency, for example, in that process. So when you specifically make it about UX, do you still include this universal idea into it? Like, building culture is basically avoiding politics. Is it?
No, it's embracing politics in a lot of ways. This one of the companies I work for, Nielsen Norman Group has these levels of UX maturity, right? There are 5 levels they have now. They just revised it. Company I went to work for as the first user experience person, professional, when I came into the company, I would put their maturity at, I think it's level 2 or 3. They knew they needed it, They knew that they needed user experience perspectives to be, excuse me, competitive, but they had no idea what user experience was, and they didn't know where to go forward. By the time we got this project, this breakthrough project together, we had the entire organization excited about it. The entire organization understood the value of user experience and their role in it, right? Because it is not just a single UX professional's responsibility to create a great user experience. It's the entire organization's, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the support lines are rude to customers when they call for help, that's part of the experience. If that makes the company fail, right? If the development team creates buggy software, then that's part of the experience, right? So everybody understood their part in contributing to a great experience. And when you have people like that who understand their role, then you start to see the culture change. And it did. But a caveat, the culture can go down just as quickly as it goes up, right? So don't think because you've got your company to a high level of maturity in user experience design that it won't change almost overnight, because it does sometimes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been part of some difficult situations. Let's just put it this way, and most of the times the solution was to leave instead of trying to change it, because it's so technically the bigger the company, the more top down the culture trickles through, and then people sort of then doze off and say like, listen, I've developed a thick skin, it's okay, it doesn't affect me, but that's wrong. It does affect them, right? So and so there were moments where you're like, okay, it is what it is, and maybe it's not worth my health and my mental well-being to fight or make this better, and let's look for another adventure, right? And I see this a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of things have to come together to make it work well. Let me tell you a little bit more about that one experience. I was newly hired to the company. I went out and did a listening tour. I went to visit customers. I went to a customer. Customer said, it just ought to be easier. You ought to be able to do this and do this and do this and just get it done. Not spend a lot of time in this application, but get things done. And so she told me exactly what we needed to do to come up with this breakthrough product. We then worked underground, okay? I got a very small team to operate outside the Agile machine, a prototyper, a designer, myself, doing more research and stuff. And we worked for about a month, 6 weeks, to come up with a really exciting prototype to show what this new experience could be like. We went in front of the executive leadership team, presented it. The CEO jumps up and says, wow, this is great. This could be a brand new product. Let's go, forget the roadmap we've got. Let's do something like this. But that was my big mistake, is I did not engage the product manager, the lead product manager, chief product manager, and the lead developer, the director of development, in that process. So here I've excited the executive team, but my colleagues, the ones that are going to work with me to make this thing happen, were really angry, right? You didn't involve us. We've worked here for 10 years. We've proposed things to them. They ignored us. These ideas you've got are very similar to the ones we always had. And suddenly here you are, the hero of the company, right? It's the wrong way to do it. It took me years, well, not years, it took me months to repair that relationship and bring them into contributing to the design, making them understand that I cannot succeed unless you do, unless you participate. So over time, that changed the culture, right, to the point where we didn't have those conflicts anymore. We all worked together. When we made a presentation to the leadership, it was not just me, it was the product manager and the lead developer as well, all singing the same tune, saying this is what we should do, and that was much more effective. But it was a lesson I learned. You can't just come in and work underground. There's a guy named Guilford Pinchot. He wrote the 10 entrepreneurial commandments, entrepreneurial. So you're being an entrepreneur within a company, entrepreneur. One of my favorite ones was work underground as long as you can to avoid triggering the corporate immune system, which is what I was affected by. The immune system came out and attacked me.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to surface from the underground and engage the corporate immune system so that they're part of the process.
Gotcha. Yeah, but I think the will to make things better or make things work has to be there from both sides in this case. So and then you can find ways to improve things, right? It's a dialogue, and that's very important. And this is what I tell other people. Like I've got younger siblings, I've got younger designers who are always there, and I tell them like, listen, you need to understand that design is not a dictatorship at all. So just because you know how to do something doesn't mean that this is the only way it should be done, right? And it starts from there. But then at the same time, the product managers, the engineers, they have so much value to contribute to the whole process. Because in most of the cases now, because we've got these specialized roles, probably more specialized than they were when you started off. So we've got researchers that are just doing research. Then we've got product managers. Then we've got based on the company and the product and the industry, you've got like technical writers, and then you've got like different people doing their job, but we all sort of come together, we work. And that is when people become really possessive about their small chunk. It's like, oh, this is mine, don't touch Figma, because Figma is ours, we designers. And for me, these are all throwaway things, because because I'm from architecture, we started off with sketches, and we just throwing sketches and throwing sketches and throwing things and there's always it's always a revision. So that's what we always say. It's never the final one. It's a revision, like it's a version in software. So that's why my Figma files look like a mess when you're going through that process, right? Because we're building and we're building and we're building. So one question about the book. So I because when I realized I was doing UX design, I started buying books to learn UX design, right, properly, because I didn't know what UX was. Then I was trying to officially, formally understand the structures, but I never came across your book. And is that a publishing thing? So can you explain why that is?
Well, I've actually written 4 books now so far. The first 3 were with publishers. Okay. The first 2 books were on artificial intelligence way back in the 80s. Expert Systems, like I said. And then I did one on GNU Emacs, which was a programming environment for people. And then, of course, the politics of UX. I am not good at marketing, okay? I just not. When I published with these publishers, they said, writing a book's great, but you got to be able to market it. You've got to have a platform, right? Where you've got people out there that you can send this book to. They can do reviews. They can get out the publication of it, promote it, and so on and so forth. And so what I've been trying to do is I've got this LinkedIn newsletter called Designing, the Politics of UX. And so I try to get a message out that way. But I'm really not very good at promoting stuff, and I probably need to get better at that. I have been able to build up my following on LinkedIn and my subscribers to my newsletter to a respectable amount. I think it's over 3,000 now. But that's just not something I'm good at, and honestly, it's not something that I want to put my time into. Okay, I want to write, I want to think, I want to come up with new ideas, I want to put them down on paper, I want to get them out there. Yes, it would be nice if people knew they were out there and they were reading them. But at some point, I'm hoping that I can start doing virtual workshops, as a lot of people do right now, as well as a live workshop here in Colorado, where I bring people in on a retreat, and over the course of 3 or 4 days, they come with a problem, they leave with a solution to a really revolutionary redesign of their product line. I think that would be great fun to do that in an inspirational environment with the mountains around you, in a hotel conference room that had windows. It wasn't just this sterile environment, right? That you actually could feel inspired. You could go outside, sit around, have a drink, talk to other people, and come up with great ideas. So that's kind of a dream of mine, where I hope to go with this eventually.
That's amazing. I think that was my second question. Why didn't you sort of make it into a course for people, or make it into these, like, these workshops, as you were saying? Because what you have to offer is great in the sense that it's very tangible, and it's actionable, and there you have frameworks. Because I didn't really go through the whole book. I told you, full disclosure, that I used ChatGPT to sort of summarize main key points to understand like what the book was all about. And a lot of these things are things people want to fix immediately. So I call them issues. They're not challenges, they're issues. So I want to solve the issue of politics, for example. So what you have, like 3 parts where you say relationships. I want to fix the relationship issue, right? I want to fix the operation issue, and I want to do the career issue. So I think it would be great if you could maybe spin out some courses or some workshops, as you said. That would be lovely. Even it's like it's not even a makeover for the product, but it's a makeover for the person who's working, right? So, and that itself could be great for the employee EX, like employee experience.
Yeah, in every company I've worked for, I've trained people. I've conducted workshops within the company on design thinking, and then on this approach that I've used that came out of my time at HP. And so I do try to get people to understand what it is, because that's the big challenge, right? You say, if you go to a party and you say, what do you do? I'm a user experience designer. What is that? Nobody knows what that means. And you really don't have time to explain it to them, right? But the way I tend to tell customers when I go out and visit them, I says, my job is to make your job easier, right? And the way I'm going to do that is by understanding what your needs are, your big unmet needs, understanding where your pain points are, and then coming back and designing the software or the product to mitigate those pain points and to really understand what your needs are. I have this concept in this new book called The Object of Focus, and that came out of my experience of interviewing this customer, which was saying, she was a teacher, and she said, I'm looking at your product and all I see are a bunch of buttons and menus and stuff like that. I'm not seeing my students, right? And so every person has this thing that they want to focus on. For a teacher, it's their classroom with their students, right? Yeah. For somebody writing a document, it's a document, right? That's pretty good, paragraphs, sentences, all that. But every product has that thing that you want to focus on. And if your product is not transparent, meaning that you can just look at your product and see this object that you want to focus on behind it, then you fail. And you have to come back and try to integrate what currently are functions that are around the periphery of this object and integrate them into the product. And I can't get into this. I'm going to get into it very deeply in this book, right? We're going to talk all about how to actually come up with the anatomy of an experience, what an experience is, how to analyze that experience to find out what the user requirements are from the experience. And by user requirements, I don't mean the requirements that the user has of the product. I'm talking about the requirements the product has of the user. User, you will do this. You will do this. You will comply with my way of thinking, right? You will adapt to my way of doing things. No. We're going to understand what we're requiring the user to do, and then we're asking, is that relevant to this result they're trying to achieve, this outcome they're trying to get to? Is the actions that they need to perform, the information they need to know, is that findable if they don't know it already? And once they find it, is it effective, meaning can they understand it? So it all goes back to that, and that's kind of the theme of this next book, is to try to put this approach out there. I've got a number of tools, a number of ways of modeling the user experience are going to be in this book. one of two things is going to happen. I'm either completely delusional, or I might have something that's useful for the community.
Excellent. I think this is how we want people to be. Like it's a zero-sum game, like and that's why you go for the win. But I think this is fascinating. So this whole idea of like breaking out of the box of this. It's almost a paradigm shift, I would say. The way I look at it is, as in when you're saying the object of focus, and I'm like thinking through some of the projects that I've done, and I'm like, you're right. So you're in medtech thing. People are experiencing and visualizing certain different things, even different user types using the same platform are doing different jobs and visualizing it completely differently. So what is the object of focus, and what is our experience like? I think it's really and it's going to help people break out of the UX bubble. I would say I call it a bubble because I think it's become a cult, which is okay. I'm not against cults, but it's limiting. It's limiting for people like me who would like to now open and create other experiences as well, like just to go beyond, let's do a screen. It's just the screen thing is a little limiting for me. And I think it's a good segue to talk about the future of UX and what do you think about it, your thoughts, because you actively think about these things.
Yeah, well, the future of UX is going to be continuing. I don't see an end to it. An end to the evolution of it. It's going to continue to improve, and as things go on. There was a time, actually, about the time COVID hit, I thought, I don't have anything useful to say anymore. The user experience has come so far that I can't tell you anything new, And then my wife was a teacher. She started using this new software for teaching remotely, students remotely, because that's everything was shut down. It was terrible. It was terrible. It woke me up to all the different challenges, even companies that really put the user experience forward, like Apple. I still have challenges with a lot of the stuff that they put out there. So the way I see it evolving is it's going to be integral to any company's success. In my new book, I talk about the success workshop, where we basically try to, through a Q&A process, a question and answer process, arrive at the conclusion that our company cannot succeed unless our customers do. As fundamental as that sounds, it is not widely known, okay? Mm-hmm. A lot of people, I've been in a lot of situations where somebody from, in my organization, a partner, like there was this one support guy, and I was saying, we need to improve the experience here, we need to make this a lot simpler for people. And the guy who ran the support group said, well, wait a minute, we don't want to make this stuff too simple. We sell a lot of support contracts, right? Sure. It's like we profit from being confusing, right? So you got that's why changing the culture is so important. You've got to get them to understand that everyone owns the user experience. But what we bring as user experience professionals that is unique is and I talked about this at the conference this past year, is a superpower. We see problems that no one else can see. Okay, somebody else says, well, we designed it this way. Yeah, maybe it's a little difficult, but we'll just write something in a manual or on the support website or something like that and tell them what to do. It's fine. We fixed it that way. No, it doesn't fix it at all. Our superpower is whenever we look at things, we see this invisible communication that is occurring between me and the screen, right? And the application that I'm working with. We see the information that is flowing between us. We see the questions that are being generated from the user and how they're being answered in feedback by the product or not, right? So to me, the evolution of user experience, as you said, it's become bloated. I've got this book, and I think there's like 40 different, activities that you can do in UX design. It's just become very, very complicated. And I'm trying to get it down to its essence. And I'm trying to communicate that the main way that user experience professionals can help, especially in the world of AI, now that taking over a lot of stuff, No one can do that superpower like we can. We see problems, we can analyze problems, we can model the problem, we can tear it apart, and we can put it back together. Now there are a lot of other people that can then take what we do and, develop something with it, come up with a support protocol for it, come up with a product management feature strategy for it. But we are the feeders of that information. This other thing that we need to do is inspire. Influencing is not enough. You've got to be able to inspire the people around you. And honestly, we have the tools, unlike other groups, to do this because we have prototyping tools. We can come up with cool stuff. And it's important to be cool, okay? It's important to be usable, but it's also important to be cool. That's what shallow executives really love, this is see something cool. I went to a conference, it was a education conference. My company was exhibiting in the expo in the booth down there, right? And we had come up with this prototype we were going to be showing people, getting feedback on it. And it was a feature that would take information from tests that students have taken and then would group them into groups, right? This one's a low reading group, this one's a medium, this is a high, this is super, and so on. And up to that point, the teacher would have to drag and drop. Here's a student, I'm going to drag him into this group, I'm going to take this student, drag it into another group, right? So we said we don't have time to demo that. So we're going to just have a little button here that we press, and then all of these students are going to fly around this and into their respective groups. It was not a feature that we were going to build, but as soon as we showed it to customers, they said, wow, that's amazing, that's incredible, we've got to have this product now. So it was a challenge to the development team to figure out how to do it. They did it. But it just goes to show you that you have to wow people, right? And that's why I'm all about revolutionary redesign. I'm not interested in incremental improvements. Yes, they're important. They can be good. But over time, right, the curve goes up. And if you're looking at the complexity versus usability curve, the complexity goes up, usability goes down. You got to find a whole new design paradigm, as you said, that retains the existing functionality, that drops the complexity dramatically. And that's my focus. That's what I want to do. I don't know how to do it yet, but that's what drives me. Just figure that out.
It's really interesting. It's almost like reducing complexity by reducing features, but going deeper into features. So I've always had this idea, like, when we talk to developers, we talk to, we need a new feature. A new feature comes in the form of a new button or a new tab on the top somehow, or a new drop-down item, because that's you need an entry point. Absolutely, you need an entry point and then everyone rallies for all the new features. Who gets the visual feature? Because the real estate is limited, and whoever's more influential, 3 weeks later you see that button on the top. It's like, okay, I know who won those discussions, right? So but I've always felt that we've been looking at the interfaces, and I'm in terms of like speaking of the future. And again, I'm happy to be wrong all the time. I'm really happy to come up with ideas and then see those ideas fail. It's completely okay. So one of the things that I've been thinking of is that the future of interface is the limitation of screens. Yeah. So I feel we need to design less to do more, and I feel the problem is we're feeling really, really useless now, because now you don't need, or this is what I'm feeling. I'm personally telling you this. I'm like, okay, so for me, this whole idea, I'm just design these beautiful dashboards and so all those things are now becoming part of these, let's say, design systems that the AI is spitting out, right? And you can improve them, and they're all incremental changes and not, as you said, exponential changes, right? In thinking, in design, so what do you think about the impact of UX designers on design going forward?
I'd love to use what I call the takeaway method, where we said, okay, you got this product, it's designed in this framework. Framework's been around a long time. What if you couldn't have a menu? Take it away. Take away that as an option. What would you do then? You've got a social media application. Take away this activity stream. What would you do? And it forces you to get past your assumptions, get past your safety net of, oh, I'm doing a new product design. Okay, well, I know I'm going to have this. I'm going to have this. Left nav. That. All these default design decisions that have already been made for you, right? And you're just going to put them together and assemble them, and there you got your product. But that's how you come up with these revolutionary redesigns, is you take away things that are your crutches, your things that you rely upon, and try to come up with a completely new approach. One of the things that bugs me about when I use Word, for instance, you got the object of focus, right, this document in the middle, which is great, that's perfect. But then you got all the functionality all around the side of the screen and the bottom, right? It's just all around. If we took that away, how would we integrate that functionality into the object of focus, right? It's starting to be done, right? You can right-click on something, and you can see functions that you can operate on that. That's a good start, but we're not there yet. And so I'm hoping that we can, voice interfaces, right? I don't know if everybody in an office environment wants to be talking to their computer, but there's some things that can be done there. But how could you take the same values that are presented by a voice interface and find another way of communicating with an object? Because a lot of times that's what you want to do. You see something there on the screen, you want to grab it, you want to manipulate it, you want to change it, but in order to do so, you got to find this thing around the periphery of the product in order to operate on it, and that's not the ultimate design. We got a ways to go there. So I always look at, again, that's a flaw I have. I can't stand to just say, okay, we did it this way once, let's do it the same way again. Even breakthrough products that I've had in my career, they're old now. It's old news. We got to move on beyond those.
Thank you so much, John. I think we should end on this, because I can talk to you for hours and hours, but I'm very mindful of the time and respectful of the time that you've spent with us. And thank you so much. I'd love to have you again later, sometime in future when you have more time, and pick your brains on the new book even more so, what you're thinking about, the ideas.
I'd love to come back, Ali. It's been a pleasure. And once my new book is out and I figure out what I'm talking about, I'll have more to say.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, John.
Okay. Thanks.